Welcome everyone to Yachting International Radio. You're with Karine Rayson from the Crew Coach on the Wellbeing Project. Today we're talking about a very important topic, and that is cover, psychological cover for seafarers, super yacht crew. And this is something that we don't often see. So I'm very grateful to have Tim Reedman from Reedman Wealth Management. Welcome, Tim.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Tim, for those of you who don't know, is married to Cherise Reedman, who started this wonderful initiative, and that's the Pearls of Wisdom. So do look it up if you don't know about it. But Cherise has certainly shared her romance before, well, just getting to meet you, Tim, and what that was like. And from Cherise's perspective, it sounded like you had to really sweep her off her feet before the next step happened.
I guess I must have done is that we're still here with a small person. I guess it worked. Yeah.
I'd love to know, and also curious to know how you got into the super yacht industry.
I've been doing financial planning for over 30 years and specializing in yacht crew for the last 10, having been asked by Maritime Academy and a couple of other local businesses involved, saying that people got very little advice, if any, and often the advice that they got, sadly, wasn't great. And there have been a lot of bad experiences out there. In the UK, the regulation, the legality to do my job is quite extreme. And having become chartered and then a fellow, and being qualified as high as you can get in the UK, they wanted somebody to come in and help. So, yeah, about 10 years ago, went to my first show in On T in 2013, as it was. The rest is history.
No,
yes, as my darling.
How did you meet Cherise?
Well, my darling wife was introduced to me as a potential client.
Oh.
Somebody said, look, you should have a chat with Tim. You know, you're chief stewardess, you're doing well in your career, and have a chat with him. So I sent her an email, introducing myself, ignored, sent her another one, ignored. And after, I have a rule, if I have 3 that get ignored, that's it. You know, I'm not going to pester people forever. If they don't want to talk to me, they don't want to talk to me. And so forward wind 2 or 3 weeks to Palmer Yacht Show 2015. The kind person introduces, oh, Tim, this is Cherise. I went, oh, you're the one that's ignored me 3 times. I don't know who was more embarrassed. It was either Cherise's embarrassment or the fact that I had sunburn. So our faces were equally pink. Which we sort of married it together with a glass of rosé in the middle. And then we got chatting and we went from there.
What a great story. So, Tim, for me, and I think that's for most crew members as well, finding an organization that you can work with, that you trust, you can trust, so important. And I've heard very similar stories of what you've shared about financial management companies that have really ripped crew off. So I'm going to ask you a question before we dive in. If you're looking for financial guidance and support, what should you look out for and what questions should you be asking in the assessment?
That's a really good question.
Assessment stage,
Yeah. Primarily, where are you from a tax perspective? That's incredibly important. I can only look after UK tax resident crew. There's a great many of them. And so anybody that's UK tax resident, I'm always very happy to have a chat and steer them in the right direction. And being backed by a FTSE 100 company where we manage nearly 160 billion pounds of client funds, it's not somebody who's working out of On-Team or Palmer and doesn't have the backing. If you're non-UK tax resident, then I urge you to seek advice in your home country. You know, when you go home, speak to your father or a family or a mother and say, you know, in the local town, who is the accountant? Who is the qualified advisor? Because often companies are not regulated where you would think they would be, and they hide under umbrellas where there's no ombudsman. So that basically means if ever there's a problem and ever you complain, it's them that decide whether you're in the right or they're in the right. And you can imagine which way that often goes.
Yeah.
In the UK, you have a government-backed organisation that is independent, that then assesses and makes a judgment that's binding on the advisor. So it's key to try and find where they're registered and what sort of backup if something goes wrong.
Fantastic advice. Very helpful. Thank you, Tim. So looking at crew well-being, why or what prompted you to search for cover for crew around mental health and psychological support?
It was something that came within sorry, that's Esme's degree. Yeah, I think the background. It was something that came from a plan that I developed early doors with Liverpool Victoria, a very well-known insurance company in the UK, where I noticed from crews that the actual support they got, either physical or psychological, if something went wrong, very short-lived, generally 3 months. Cayman contracts, 3 months, 16 weeks was the most that they would support people for if something went wrong, mentally or physically. And then generally the contract meant that the boat could dispense with their services and they would be gone. And I found that quite shocking. So we created a plan that jumped in if you can't work due to illness or injury for any reason, including mental health.
Wow.
We then jump in and we pay crew up to 60% of their yachty salary, tax-free, paid into the UK. And that then pays in, month out, going up in line with inflation, right through to retirement, so age 68 in the UK. So it's an incredibly comprehensive plan that ensures that something goes wrong, you can pay your bills, you can eat, you can travel, you can do things while you're recuperating. And psychological side of it, I was staggered when I looked into the figures of how many people have mental health issues. And so from that side, this psychological cover becomes very important. So through LV, through their doctor's services, they have qualified therapists, psychologists who can remotely interact with crew if they're really struggling, whether it's PTSD, whether it's substance abuse, sleep disorders, compulsive behavior, sort of harassment where they literally can't cope with what they're doing. There is an app, you go on, book a session, and you can have 5 sessions in a year free of charge as part of the plan.
Okay, and how much does it cost?
That's a bit of a hard one because, of course, when you're talking insurance, it depends what do you do, where do you do it, how. So obviously, a captain is going to be less risk than a third engineer because he's working with big, heavy tools, for example.
Yeah.
And also, how much are you covering? So somebody who's on £10,000 a month, their premiums are going to be higher than someone who's on £2,000 a month. But as a rule of thumb, and this is an extremely wide rule of thumb, it generally costs around 2 to 3% of your earnings. That's generally a rule of thumb that's there. If someone's on around about £3,000 a month, it's generally around about sort of 60 to sort of £80 somewhere around.
60 to £80 a month. And just, can you provide an overview of what that would cover specifically? What would you expect to get?
So if you had somebody if you had a deckhand or a stewardess who were on £3,000 a month, they could be covered for up to £1,800 a month. And once they stop working, the boat stopped paying them, that £1,800 a month is then paid to them until they return to work doing their job. And if they don't return to work, it will carry on paying them. And they have rehabilitation services and other things to get people back into work as well.
Okay. So when you mentioned the 5 sessions for free, so that the physical support is obviously different to the mental health support. So in terms of that monthly cover, it's more physical rehab, and with, the mental health support of 5 sessions in addition to that if required.
Yeah. So the idea is behind, generally, if somebody has got some issues physically, the boat's job is to repatriate them back to a home. And equally, if somebody cannot work due to mental health reasons, the same applies. So generally from that side, what they are trying to do is if someone is in a bit of in a poor way, mentally or physically, they're trying to provide interim support in order to be able to get them back to their home country in order to then get full-time support. And what they then do from that side is there is rehabilitation services within the plan. Because I guess if you look at it from a business perspective, they want to be paying out for as least amount of time as possible.
Yeah.
So it's in there. So with rehab services that are there, it really is trying to get them as much help as soon as possible to ensure they can get back to work.
Okay.
So the remote services are really designed to be there as an instant, quick help that they may, back end of beyond in the Maldives. Are you going to be able to get hold of a psychologist? No, you're not, probably. Whereas this service ensures that you can have some time and to go through what your issues are and get you some help.
Understood. Do you have to be a UK resident in order to benefit from the plan?
Yes, so this particular plan, you do have to be a UK tax resident, which is around 20,000 in the industry, so it does cover quite a section. But I'm looking at the moment to try and find somebody in the international space where I can show them a blueprint of this plan and say, can you construct something for the others? In fact, I have a meeting on that. Can we pause it for 1 second? Because I really need to blow my nose. I've got hay fever.
No problem.
Bear with me 2 seconds.
Okay.
So as I say, I have a meeting today to chat with a guy who runs a similar plan. But what I need to know is, what does it cover? And there's a lot of things that you need to take on board, because you wanted this to be a blueprint, because this works. We have over 200 of these active plans in place at the moment. And I've seen people claim on it from both the physical side and also the psychological side as well. And it's been very effective. So it's a little bit what is based on the international piece to see what.
I mean, this is so important, so necessary. I'm baffled by the fact that this wasn't implemented years ago, because it's surely a service that's in demand. Curious to know, with your current clients, I know you've just released this, so I'm not too sure if it's been adopted yet, but who's paying for it? Yacht management companies, the vessel, or crew?
It's always the crew. And I think that's quite a key point. If you're having to sort of pay out 2 or 3% of your earnings in order to protect the thing that pays for everything, I think that's a reasonably good value way to do things. It also, the other thing comes along, there's 2 issues here. It gives crew the ownership of their own health. So they are doing it and it's their plan. And we know that obviously the industry can be quite transient. You can be in one boat 1 minute, something happens, you're off the boat and then you're on another one. Now, if it's a vessel paying the plan, that can cause a load of issues. Will the new vessel pay for it? If not, well, I'm not covered. And so that's a big issue. The other thing I've had in the past is where I've gone on board and done presentations, and I've heard that there's an additional cover that covers between the 3 months Cayman contract and up to 1 year. And you go, well, that's great. So, the boat's covering up to 1 year. So our plan will kick in at 1 year when that finishes. Well, next time I spoke to the manager, he said, oh yeah, we've done away with that. They've now only got the 3 months cover. And I'm like, geez, so I had to go back to all the people on that yacht and reduce their year's deferred period down to 3 months. Now, that was just a chance conversation that the boat or the owner had decided that extra 9-month fill-in plan was too expensive and they did away. So therefore, by paying for it yourself, you've got that. You can move from boat to boat and the cover moves with you. As people get promoted or have pay rises, we up the cover to match that as well. So we keep it in reality to their income. But no, I absolutely think that's why the crew should pay for it.
Yeah, it's security. And it's like, as a resident, you pay for private health insurance. And your organization doesn't pay for you. You as an individual do that. And I think the benefit of it is you choose a plan that's right for you. So then you're more empowered as a consumer in your choice.
100%. It is something, it's yours. You're taking ownership of your own health, both physically and mentally, should something go wrong. And I think that is very empowering. And, it's there. You're not behest on somebody providing it for you, where they can dangle it as a carrot if you're thinking of leaving. Oh, well, you'll lose this or you'll lose that. it is something where it's your plan, own it.
Brilliant. So how are you getting the word out there for crew? Because I think it's really important for crew to know that this is an option for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I go to most of the yacht shows that I can do. I also do a lot of yard visits. And when I'm out there, thankfully, because the word is out there of we're looking after just under 300 crew now. And so it is the situation where we can actually go there and get an audience on board a boat. And I only have to speak to the captain for 10 minutes to say, look, I've got this plan. I really think it's important for your crew. And you can get an idea quickly as to how interested the captain is in the welfare of his crew. By most of them are like, that's fantastic, come on board. And I'll say, look, you need to listen to this guy. And like I said, sadly, I can only deal with the UK tax residents. There's a lot of non-British people who have UK tax residency. So that they've managed to get in under ancestral visas or passports.
Yes.
So there is, a number of natural sort of Australians and Kiwis and South Africans that are still within the tax residency. So yeah, that's how we do it. And it's word of mouth. It really is. Things like Sharice's Pearls of Wisdom have really been a massive platform to get the word out that there is something that can help protect you.
Fantastic. Now, for those who are non-UK tax residents, how can they follow any updates with your upcoming meeting and whether there's an option for international seafarers to have a plan that can protect them? Like, do they need to sign up to your mailing list, or are you on socials? Like, what would be the best way to get that update?
I think, firstly, what I would urge non-UK national crew to do, again, when they're at home, is to speak to a qualified financial advisor in their home country to see as to whether that can, there is something locally that can work for them. As I've done it for Brits, I'm sure there is other things that are out there. Secondly, social is pretty much where we get messages that are out there. So as soon as something can be done, I will put something out on mine. Sharice will put something out on the Pearl site to say, look, for international crew, I can't help you, but here's someone that potentially can. And it's going forwards from the side of when I'm doing these boat trips, visits and shows, I can say, look, I can help this section, I can't help that section. There's somebody here that you might want to have a chat with who can.
Fantastic. And when would be the next show that you're attending? I can't remember if Palmer's.
So back to where Sharice and I met in Palmer. So sadly, she's not joining me this time. She's got a bit too much on with Pearls. So I'm going out there with my new advisor, Simon. So him and I are in Palmer from the 26th to the 29th of April. Then hopefully heading over to Antibes soon for a few days. We always do the Monaco show, and there's going to be the Pearls event in Antibes just before Monaco.
Yes.
And then Antibes, December.
Fantastic. What a lineup. Very exciting.
Yes, I do enjoy traveling.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time. That was so informative. Wonderful for me to know as well, because I work mostly with heads of departments, and fantastic. Now that I understand what you do better, I can provide them with a great resource.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.